Meet the new boss, same as the old boss. So, what does this mean for China and the rest of the world? As you may well know, recently Xi Jinping announced that he will be moving to disable any constitutional mention of term limits for the Premier of China. Now, that sent shockwaves throughout the system here, and it also should abroad because this means that Xi sees himself as being more of a emperor rather than just a term leader like the previous leaders of China ever since Deng Xiaoping put in the term limitations into the Communist Party National Congress. Now, they've been meeting all March here, talking about their long-term and short-term plans, and including going over some finer details of what Xi wants to do going forward from now until 2022 is what they're focused on initially. But we have to take a look at this and find out exactly what Xi hopes to gain by getting rid of term limits, much in the way that that Vladimir Putin did. A very crafty style. I think he took a page out of Vladimir Putin's book by carefully crafting this move over the years. As you know, there's been a great crackdown in China over the years since Xi took power on corruption, and it has had its effect on not only the Communist Party but also fringe leaders from other provinces and cities that were affected by this. Most notably, we remember a few years back with Bo Xilai and Chongqing. Now, exactly what China does call democratic parties, they always quote that there are so-called 8 democratic parties throughout China that they claim is separate from the Communist Party. And why that's technically true, in reality it's not. As with religion in China, what they basically do is they allow something to exist to have what is perceived opposition to the status quo. And so these democratic parties, they call it, are just minority ruling parties in some provinces that handle smaller matters that don't really affect too much of the power base on the national level. And that's how it is in a nutshell, summed up. So now removing the 10-year two-term limit is key because it shows that Xi Jinping, in fact, does view himself as being at the level of where Mao Zedong was, and does have the ego and the power base to really attempt to do that. As you know, he's a former military strongman, so being able to propose this kind of move and have it backed up is in large part due to his power base that he built up over the years, ever since being a minor power broker in the party years ago. Now, this centralization of power for Xi himself comes down to the fact that he may want to have a tighter grip over the party. He already has the tight grip on the military, and that's where his roots are from, his power base. He's really about civil society and the economy going forward, because this is going to be turbulent times in China, and they are trying to pull themselves out of a fossil fuel energy system. And of course, you've all read about the yuan-backed oil purchases. So the petro yuan and the talk of gold backing is really key here. So these are formidable years where China can make a move to become quite possibly the eminent power in the world stage. And in the shadow of Xi Jinping, as you know, Li Keqiang, who's always been seen as being the number 2 in China, he's basically involved with their foreign diplomacy. And but over the past couple of years, his role and his power base, his influence over the party has diminished. Now, I'm not really certain as to why that is, but I think that in the consolidation of power move, what Xi did is he got rid of some of the opposition, and he muted some of the concerns in the party about him taking, basically what is amount to emperor for life. So if we look at the rhetoric coming out of Washington too, jokingly, President Trump had said that when he commented on Mr. Xi's new way of thinking, said, well, that might be a good thing for the United States someday. So a little rib there from Donald Trump. Now, we want to look at who is exactly Xi Jinping in his personality, because the second volume of a series of volumes of books coming out on governance by Xi Jinping it basically amounts to his Little Red Book, Mao's Little Red Book, that came out and spawned what was the beginning of the Cultural Revolution and a disaster for China. Well, she's taking a page right out of his playbook, and these volumes that are coming out just are quite lengthy and talk about his philosophy on rule. He's big on rule of law, and if we want to learn more about Xi as a person, we need to go no further than to listen to what his first wife said. Yes, he has been married twice. His first wife was when he was a small-time party official, and the marriage did not last too long, all of about 3 years, I believe. And his first wife has been quoted, and her nickname is Ke Ling Ling, that her former husband is a very pragmatic man, very stubborn, very set in his ways, very much a taskmaster. This is not a creative thinker by any means. Whereas I think with Xi Jinping, he is playing checkers, and someone like Vladimir Putin is playing chess. Vladimir Putin being probably the most eminent diplomatic force on the world stage today, in terms of his ability to understand things on multi-levels and to think not only in the present but in the near future and in the distant future. But Xi is really more of a taskmaster. He believes in rule of law, believes in right and wrong, and that can be to his advantage, and it can also be part of his faults as well. And her quote basically saying that she could never have imagined that Xi would ever become the leader of China. Just because of his personality, they fought constantly at home. She says that she thinks he's an honest person and someone that has a lot of value, a lot of moral value, but ultimately too stubborn and too idealistic, especially when you consider that the name of the game in China is, bribes, payoffs, and there's a lot of deep-seated morality issues and deep-seated ways of doing things here that just can't be brushed aside through anti-corruption graphs. There's always going to be some of that remaining, and that's a huge concern domestically. Now, what Xi Jinping did was name his own successor. Now, many people think that this gentleman here, Chen, is the pay-and-pick successor to Xi in the event that he does retire or is eliminated. He's pulled him away from Chongqing, and now he is in the central government, and this man is very close to Xi and not somebody that many people know about. And certainly you may not have heard about him in the news or read about him before. But Chen is moving up in the party, let's put it that way. And this goes to show that in the midst of other dismissals within the party, that this man moves up from being what was basically a lieutenant governor of Chongqing into the leadership den in Beijing. Tells you something. Now, as far as what the parallels are with Mao Zedong, we can see that in the 3,000 member National People's Congress, what Xi may be doing is setting himself up for being the leader of China until the 2020s and then retiring. But as with Deng Xiaoping, even after retirement, he was still able to pull on the strings of the military, economic chiefs, and other areas within the government, and be able to really control and handpick successors in a lot of those posts. So just because somewhere down the road that Xi Jinping decides to retire does not mean by any means that his power base has weakened much at all. If you look at Jiang Zemin, what he had been doing behind the scenes ever since retirement was remarkable. He had almost as much power as Hu Jintao, who was the leader of China. In fact, Jiang Zemin was put on house arrest for a brief amount of time because he had backed Bo Xilai from Chongqing, and that coup to take away the power base of Xi Jinping never did go through, and of course Bo is still in prison today. What's the viewpoint as far as from the Chinese? Well, the Chinese press is always going to paint it a certain way because this is a totalitarian state, and opposition opinions are not allowed. In fact, they're banned. You can't have an opinion that's opposing. So it leads you to wonder, how could they have successful dialogue and be able to improve the party, improve the lives of the Chinese people, if you can't have any honest and open dialogue? Good question, right? Well, this article here says that just because Xi has made himself leader for life does not mean that he's a Western-style leader. And it goes through the Politburo, and it shows that, in fact, there are no fewer than about 7 of the inner party members that hold most of the power base. Now, if you look at these gentlemen here, these are basically the 7 that rule over the 3,000 inner party people that run China. Although what the article fails to mention is that Xi basically has handpicked these men to lead up the inner party workings. So criticism aside, he can eliminate any one of these 7 anytime he wants and be able to elect them to take over their position. And he has done so in the recent past. When one of the university professors here in China was asked by a foreign news agency what his opinion was on Xi Jinping being ruler for life, he flat out came out and said, "Listen, don't ask me that because you know that I can't say anything about it. You want me to get in trouble?" And that was a quote. That wasn't off record. So, tongue in cheek, basically, if someone has an opinion on it, they can say that they have a different opinion, but they can't actually say what the opinion is. So that's it, kind of in a nutshell. Gives us a little bit of greater understanding of this move by Xi Jinping, and hopefully it gives you a little bit of a greater understanding on the personality of Xi, and that will give you a little more information. Looking through the releases, I believe there's nine novels that are coming out. 2 are out already on governance. You're going to find only tidbits of the real man inside of that. You're not going to know a great deal about him personally through those viewpoints. The views of his ex-wife and some of the people earlier in his life that were involved with him in a personal manner will give you more insight into who he is and how he really governs behind the scene.